Hello, Dave. Such
Hello.
to have you join us today on the Speak Up podcast. David, we had a good chat prior to this, and I'm so excited for this session together because you've got so much wisdom in this space. Let's say a lot of experience, and you're so relatable to the everyday man who we are trying to help right now. So, Dave, please introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Dave Hafferman. I'm a keynote speaker, hypnotherapist, mental health trainer, and author of Morphine to Match Fit.
Nice. And how long have you been an author for?
Literally about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write a book?
Probably the hundreds and hundreds of people who said you need to write a book.
Okay.
And the amount of procrastination that's gone into it has been incredible. But it needed to be done. So I started off simple. I've got a bigger book in me at the moment that I'm writing. But
Nice.
yeah, I'm really proud about that. I've actually got out there. It's published.
Yeah, I'm myself, but I am due to write one around some of the industry stuff that we do. But I do hear that once you get over that sort of hump, then it starts to become enjoyable. But it's very hard to get through that procrastination phase. So, well done to you for actually for completing the book. That a lot of books don't get started, but they never get finished. So, yeah, congrats.
Exactly. And I didn't write it to become a millionaire. It's never going to happen. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the next Tony Robbins. I don't want to be the next, New York Times bestseller. I just needed to get something out there so people can read it. It's a book that is spaced really well. It's incredibly ideal for neurodivergent people as well. And the way it's spaced out, the way it's got blank pages in between. And I had these people at front of mind when I was writing it as well. So that seems to work its way. The reviews that I've had in since from people who said, I don't really like reading books, but I enjoyed reading this one because it felt like it was just a simple book to read.
Yeah, and I imagine it'd be very relatable coming from you, Dave.
That's what I wanted to get across is, I could bring out all these big words and show that I'm intelligent, but keep it simple, stupid. I mean, just keep it simple, keep it relatable.
Yeah. So give us a premise of your book. Talk to us about
it. So it's half sort of memoir about my experiences, but it's basically about the shift code, which is my framework that I've developed over 30 years. Every single experience that I've gone through has led to this framework. So it's called a shift code, which is basically state, habit, identity, focus, and transformation. And it all started when the main part of the book is about when I was on 36 tablets a day. I was diagnosed with a terminal illness with motor neuron disease 14 years ago. And I was on 36 tablets a day plus morphine. And I was a complete zombie. I couldn't even get on the floor to play jigsaw with my children. That's how bad it was. I couldn't move. And everybody always says, the moment that everything changed was, when you came off the tablets. And I say, no, it was the 30 seconds before when I checked in with myself and I said, where am I now? Where am I actually now? Not where I think I am, not where I want to be. Where am I actually in this moment? And that was like 30 seconds to a minute before I came off all my tablets.
And so you obviously had to become your own doctor to be able to make that sort of decision.
Yeah.
I've worked in this space for quite some time. I'm not against big pharma, but I do believe there's a hell of a lot that needs to be done before we go down the route of big pharma. And clearly you've got a shared vision on that, a shared passion on that. How was it to actually look? We all probably think, these probably ain't doing us too well, but you also then instantly think, well, doctors know best.
Yeah.
When was the moment where you thought, you know what, I know my own body and I am going to do what I'm going to do for my own mental and physical health? What made that moment?
It was my youngest child, Jack, who's now 15. He asked me to come on the floor and play jigsaw with him. And I just couldn't get off the settee. I couldn't move. And it was at that point where I didn't become a father to say no to my children on the most basic of needs.
Yeah.
You know, that's a given. You just get on the floor and play with your child. I couldn't get on the floor.
Take for granted, right?
Exactly. And that was the point where I thought, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't become a father to say no to my children on basic stuff like that. Yeah. So I started educating my stuff because I knew 36 tablets a day wasn't normal. But I was under 5 different consultants. I was under the neurologist, I was under the urologist, I was incontinent, I was under the audiologist. I've got severe loss of hearing now. I was under the lung consultant, and there was another consultant that I genuinely don't have a clue who he was or what he was there for. I think he just felt left out because I'd pretty much gone through the whole NHS. So I think I want a piece of this. I have no idea who he was or what he was there for. But what was happening, it was all medicating for their own particular field, but not talking to each other. So when I was educating myself on what tablets I was having, I realized that pretty much half of my tablets were counteracting the other half and adding side effects. And so I'm quite black and white. I said, you know what, I'd rather be off all my tablets, still be in pain, because I was still in pain, even with all my tablets, even with the morphine, I was still in pain.
Yeah.
So I said, I'd rather still be in pain, but have no side effects and have no issues like that. So it was at 30 seconds before when I looked at my pill box and my morphine and said, you know what? I'm not in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm not in a good place, and it's only going to get worse. And I'm in control here, not the farmer, not the doctors. And so basically, I chose to come off it at that moment. My wife hated the idea. And she said, you're going to die. I said, well, I'm dying now. I said, this is not living. You know, I said, this is not living. I said, I don't want to be here if this is my life. He said, I know I've got so much more to give. And so she was never going to stop me. And the first 7 to 10 days was hell, but I was living in hell anyway, so it didn't really matter.
So just talk me through what hell was, physically or mentally?
Both.
Really? Yeah,
because the conditioning is there to, you know, we've grown up to accept that the doctors know best. We've grown up to know that, you know, because the consultants are far more intelligent than I am. You know, who am I to go against the grain? Who am I to go against these very intelligent people? So there was the mental side, but also the physical side. You know, my body felt like it was falling apart. I started feeling even more pain because obviously the receptors weren't being blocked. And yeah, for the first 7 days, I was vomiting. I was grey. It was awful. But then after about 7 to 8 days, I started walking a bit further. The brain fog started clearing. You know, the clarity of thought started coming. I actually found myself getting on the floor with my children. And that was the point when I played jigsaw after about eight days. I sat down for probably about 5 minutes and I actually finished the jigsaw with my child. I thought, yeah, that's that little bit of white hope that I needed to say, yeah, I've made that decision and I made the right decision. And I've not looked back since. Yeah.
How long ago was that?
About 5 years ago now, 4 years ago.
Wow. See what happens when you take your health into your own hands and you become proactive. You do things that doctors and experts would never believe that could be possible, right? It happened to my dad. Six months he got told he had to live 200 yards a day that he could walk. 6 7 years ago that was.
Yeah.
We know the power of natural healing. We know the power of mindset. So David, obviously that was 5 years ago. Talk me through what your life is now, because obviously let's have it right, as a motor neurons sort of, you know, sufferer, your expectancy is to go. And so what's happened in these last 5 years? Are you still able to work?
Yeah, well, there's a plot twist because with motor neuron disease, I was diagnosed 14, 15 years ago. And And motor neurone is a terminal disease. It's a terminal diagnosis. 14 years later, I'm still here. So the flag says it's not terminal. So for the last year or so, I've been fighting with the GPs to recode, because as most people do, you take your life in your own hands when you feel like you're not being listened to. And this is part of my identity. If I don't feel like I'm being listened to or heard, I'll do something about it. And I started researching what on earth's going on, because I've got a paralyzed diaphragm. I have difficulty swallowing. I've got loss of hearing. I've got muscle atrophy. My legs are wasting. Various other things. My eyes, you may notice, my eyes droop. I can't look left and right, up and down. And so all these things together, it is multi-system, multi-failure. I've got right bundle branch block in my heart and bivascular block, so I'm 2 out of 3 ready to go for complete heart failure. And so quite a lot going on. But I also found a letter from 2012 that said mitochondrial, which the doctors had ignored. I thought, well, if it's mitochondrial, it can't be nerve driven, it can't be motor neuron. And so I started fighting and started educating myself again on what's going on in my body.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just short of 3 months ago now, I was finally reclassified and recoded. So now I've got something called chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia plus. So the CPEO part is my eyes and the issues with the eyes, but the plus is a multi-system. So everything that I'd gone through that they'd put down to motor neuron is this plus element of the CPEO plus.
So diagnosis effectively at the start.
Yeah, they completely misdiagnosed me.
Was it the wrong diagnosis, or did you change the diagnosis? It was
100% wrong diagnosis.
How was you being treated on the wrong diagnosis for?
Which obviously sent me down the wrong pathway. So, for example, the last 5 years, my ECGs have shown having right bundle branch block and bivascular block, and a high QRS reading of 168, which is quite high. I believe it's supposed to be about 100, which is the electrical pathway to the speed that it goes to the heart. Because I was going down the motor neuron route, they classed it as insignificant, because right bundle branch block in most people is normal, don't worry about it. But your CPO plus, it's a major red flag. Same as bivascular block, that's close to the 3 airways going to the heart being blocked. I'm 2 out of 3. I'm very close to the 3rd one being blocked, which is pacemaker territory.
Yeah.
Had they diagnosed me with a mitochondrial and the CPO plus, they would have flagged that up, and I wouldn't have had the issues that I've got now. I've also got mitochondrial diabetes, which is a very rare form of diabetes. Only 1% in the UK apparently have got it. Again, because I was presenting at hospital with glucose levels of 103, HbA1c levels at 103, which is ridiculously high. It's almost comatose. Yet they was putting it down to type 2, whatever, but had they gone down the mitochondrial route, they would have really pushed and got me sorted, and I wouldn't have been as bad as I was. So, what can you do?
Well, I know just from obviously our previous conversation, Dave, that what you just said there, well, what we're going to do, it's, well, you just got to sort of roll with the punches. And I know that's the sort of mentality that you've got. You're a very, very resilient man. How'd you build up that resilience? How'd you get to that stage? Because obviously we've talked about the last 14 years with you dealing with illness, right? But obviously there's a huge backstory to Dave's life prior to that. And actually that journey prior has probably helped maybe build resilience in your mind to be able to roll with these punches. And I ain't being funny, but these are haymakers that you're dealing with, right? These ain't just little jabs to the chin. These are big, hefty haymakers that you've been dealing with for quite a long time, David. Can you just take us back a little bit to maybe sort of your upbringing, where you grew up? Let's just get to know you a little bit more as well.
Yes, certainly. Well, I have a phrase that I live by, which is there's a positive and a learning curve in every experience we go through, no matter how traumatic. Um, we're hardwired to think about the negatives, and by thinking about the negatives, the way our brain works, we're going to lock onto that, and then the reticular activating system will show us more of that kind of thing. So I prefer to think about the positives and the learning curves in my experiences. So I grew up in a place called Odsal, which at the time was classed as one of the roughest council estates in the whole of Europe.
Wow.
It was a scene of the riots in 1992, which was fun. And I became an altar boy at the age of 5 years old. I went to a Catholic school, and there was a church next to us. And I remember the priest coming in one day and saying, "Dave, you come in with me." So I went, and my first service at the church was at a funeral, which at 5 years old, I looked like the Milky Bar kid. He had beautiful blonde hair, national health glasses, and I was stood in front of about 150 people, all mourning, all grieving, and coughing was higher than me, and I just looked lost. I remember vividly the scene, and between the age of 5 and 8, I'd served just about 400 funerals, which is not normal. It's not normal. And at 8 years old,
mad at that sort of age.
Well, when you look at it in today's society, it's not. It's wrong. You know what I mean? Social services would be involved. Ofsted would be involved. The whole shebang. But that was my life then. That was just what I knew. And who am I to argue against? A big priest and school when I was only 6 or 7 years old. So at 8 years old, something crazy happened, and adults would sit next to me and they'd pour the heart out, and I couldn't offer advice because I was 8 years old, but what I could do was listen. And all I kept on hearing was I wish I would spend more time with them. I wish I wouldn't have that argument. I wish. And that terrified me because I could see the pain in their eyes, and I didn't really understand what regret was or what they was talking about really. But I went to the priest at 8 years old and asked him the question and said, "How do I live a life of no regret? Because it's terrifying me and I don't want that pain in my life."
And sorry, Dave, but even at that age, to be even thinking about like living with regret, it's like most of us are like, how can we get up to mischief, or how can we knock about with the mates, or chase girls? Like you're thinking of like real grown-up thoughts at this age, and I suppose because you were opened, you were brought into this world where you dealt with a lot of grief at once, but and it takes a special kind of person to be able to deal with that. It really does. So sorry to interrupt, but go back to. I
think it helped the fact that they gave me 5p every time they got up. That helped. That helped massively. And I could go to Bergen's ice cream van and get an ice cream. But no, I went to the priest and asked this question, and he could have quite easily told me to go away. And in the 80s, the Catholic Church, there was a lot of abuse going on and what. I never had any of that, thankfully. But what I did is I was somebody who really sort of mentored me and really understood, that I wanted to be safe, because Odsal was a very rough place and I didn't want to be involved, all that. And he sat me down and said, "Dave, to live a life of no regret, you need to make peace with your decisions, both good and bad, immediately." And I remember walking out of that church and it was like, I don't know if you know wrestling, but the bushwhackers, I was like, I was going absolutely crazy. And I was like, no regret, no regret, no regret, all the way from the church to my house. And it was like a psychotic experience. It was out of body experience. And from that point on, I vowed I would never leave this planet with the words "I wish" coming from as my last words. And every client that I've worked with, that's at the core. I don't ever want somebody drawing the last breath and saying the words "I wish." I just want them to say, "I'm thankful,"
And so, you've now lived a life since that time, right?
Well,
you sit here and say it yourself.
Yeah.
Good. It must have stuck with you.
It sits beautifully with me, because my wife said to me a few months back, she said, because I've got the mitochondrial issue, the batteries in the cells and in the muscles are not working, they're not repairing. So when you go to the gym and you get the tear in the muscles, and then they repair and go bigger. Mine are not repairing. So whenever I play football or whenever I play rugby or whenever I walk, I'm in agony a few hours later because they're not repairing.
Yeah.
And I still coach football, I still play football, I still coach rugby league, I play rugby league.
I do really, yeah.
And my wife is saying, he said, oh, you'll end up in a wheelchair, you're going to. And my response to her was, well, we've got wheelchair rugby. So it's a nice natural progression. They've already thought about me. And it's not like I don't take it seriously, but I don't see the point. I control the controllables. I don't see the point in controlling stuff that is completely outside of my influence.
Well, what we say is worrying is just wishing for something to happen.
Yeah.
It's out of your control. And you're sitting there and you're getting worked up and you're, getting upset and you're getting stressed out. It ain't doing anyone any favors.
No.
But we are a little bit hardwired in society to worry, right? Yeah. And to adopt a mindset like that you've got, I ain't being funny, but how old are you, Dave? Don't mind me asking.
52.
52 years old.
Yeah.
Still playing football, still going out getting after it, writing books, and you're dealing with something which would a lot of people knock them for six and keep them bedridden. That is you climbed a huge mountain there already, right?
Yeah. You know what? You mentioned mountain. I'm obsessed with Mount Everest. And my biggest goal is to stand at base camp.
Really?
Yeah, which again sounds ludicrous when you've got like 30% vital lung capacity and your legs are wasting away and what have you. But I'm sure they've got donkeys and they've got helicopters, so I'm all right. And oxygen tanks. There's always a way. So that is my main. That's a big goal of mine to sort of. I think that'll be the point. If I start when I stand at base camp, that'll be the point where I can say, yeah, I've made it. I'm alive. But going back to what I said before about there's a positive and a learning curve in everything we do, no matter how traumatic. So many people when I talk about the funerals, up until the age of 18, I'd attended over 3,000 funerals. And I spoke to literally hundreds, if not thousands of people who have been grieving. So I'm quite an expert on death and grief and that kind of stuff, which is great. And I've got quite a unique sort of view around death and what have you. It sounds bizarre, but when people are grieving, and I don't mean this in a negative way, it's almost a selfish thing because it's about what they've lost. It's not about, the fact that that person's not in pain anymore. It's, it's a celebration of life for me, funerals. It's not a time to get morose and and I understand, we've grown up with the conditioning that funerals are horrible things and death is a horrible thing, but if you don't embrace death, you can't truly live. Death is a part of life. We can't escape it.
No.
Not even these top Chinese people who live to 120, they still die.
Still gonna go.
So we can't escape it. So the sooner we embrace the fact that death is a part of life, then we can't truly live. And I think public speaking is the number one fear for most people ahead of death. And I find that ludicrous and crazy that more people would rather be in the coffin than be on the stand delivering the eulogy. Which is crazy. But if I'd not attended those 3,000 funerals, I sit here now and I've calculated over the 30 years, I've supported and helped over 2,500 people who've been suicidal and at the lowest ebb. Had I not gone through that experience of active listening as an 8-year-old onwards, I wouldn't have been in a position to help these people and be truly open to receive them when they come. So I could look at the negative and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that at 5 years old, 8 years old. Or I could look at the positive and say, you know what? It's taught me to learn how to actively listen and help 1,000 people. We got called thousands of people who have been at the lowest ebb and been suicidal. So there's two ways of looking at it. There's always two ways of looking at something.
But it is, there is.
Yeah.
It's learning out of every experience, isn't there? And like you say, you know, in our society now, you know, even you, David, someone who's experienced it, you'd be looking at a 5-year-old going, "What, mate? I don't think you should be going in there, especially like constantly going in there." You know, but you know, there's something to be said for how it shaped you and your passion, your purpose, and your resilient mindset as well. So you've almost got to be grateful for that experience, right?
Yeah. Even from a very early age, I saw the reasons to be grateful for being involved, because it kept me out of trouble as well.
Yeah.
You know, it was a safe place for me to go.
Yeah. Well,
and you know, I'm not religious anymore, really. I'm more spiritual and more zen. But everything happens for a reason, and that kept me in a place where I was safe, kept me away from temptation, from drugs, and you know, crime and various other things that were going on in the estate.
And so, do you look to a higher power as opposed to a god, or do you believe in sort of the values and not follow it strictly, or do you just have a different way of looking at it? It's just because it's quite good for other people who might be listening to this, because a lot of people might have a bit of a lack of identity about what they actually believe, and they might be a little bit confused. I know I have been as well in the past, so it might just be helpful to hear your perspective there.
I personally don't care what people believe in. You know, it could be a shoe on the floor, as long as that promotes values of tolerance and kindness and decency and goodwill to all. But when you look deep down into most, it's basically how the brain works, you know, how the mind works. And so when somebody's praying, they're in a deep focused state, and they're focusing on something, and they're getting the emotional attachment to it. That kicks in for the reticular activating system, which then delivers what they want. They may say that was down to prayer. It could be meditation. It could be anything, but it's science at the end of the day. For me, it's science and how the mind works and how the brain works.
Well, it's backed now. It is backed.
Yeah.
You know, and so religion does have a place in society.
Yeah.
You know, our Western values are built off of Christianity, if you like, you know, and that's why, you know, you love your neighbor and you live these strong values. I want to just talk about, obviously we got speaking because of our shared love for the construction space and for the people in it. And, you know, we together, you know, are both going after a mission to try and help people, you know, live better lives and bring that suicide rate down.
Yeah.
And so our paths have crossed for that reason. So Dave, I would just like to know a little bit more about your sort of experience from the construction space as a whole.
Yeah, well, what's interesting for me with the construction space is it's probably the biggest industry that's invested the most into mental health awareness and strategies and initiatives, etc. Yet the figures are going up.
Yeah,
you know, suicide's going up. You know, absenteeism is going up, presenteeism is going up. So it's not working. And you may have the posters in the cabin, you know, with the EAPs and the lanyards saying "talk to me" or whatever.
Yeah,
you know, people don't want to talk if they feel they're gonna be judged for it, or it's going to affect the career. Because if you're on a site and you know you're responsible for something that could cause a lot of damage to a lot of people if you get it wrong. If you go to your site supervisor and say, "Oh, I'm really struggling here, my mental health's going down," you know, you're going to be sent home, and you know, you just
this is the worry.
So they keep it quiet. So most initiatives within construction deal with the 5%, the ones who are ready to put the hand up and what have you, and signpost to this signpost. The 95% who aren't ready, who feel they will be judged, or they're dealing with their own troubles silently, they won't even tell the wife or the partner and what's going on in their own mind. These are the people that I want to get to, because these are the people that are struggling the most.
Yeah.
So I've developed something called a side journal, which is a daily mental fitness app.
Yeah.
Which sits on the person's phone. It doesn't need Wi-Fi, it doesn't need signal. And what it is it asks the question that I asked myself all those years ago, you know, where are you actually now? What state are you in now before you even leave for the site? And that gives that honest reflection, you know, I'm struggling, you know. And the good thing is the data that's on there stays on their phone. The information stays on their phone. It doesn't get shared with HR. It doesn't get shared with anybody else within the workforce. All the leadership team or the HR team get is aggregate data from their workforce. So they'll see how many people have logged in, what part of the app they've done, but no names, no information, no valuable information is given to the HR, so they can be truly honest with themselves. It's in their own little 5-minute bubble before they leave the house. The next one is habits. So you know, if you drive a car, you know, when you first got into a car, learning to drive, there's hundreds of things that you need to remember. You know, the clutch, the gear stick, the steering, the hazards, everything else. Then all of a sudden it becomes muscle memory. And you can go from your house to work and not even realize how you got there because you're in autopilot. And their habits. So they could be something on the job. You know, it could be going for a coffee before getting onto site, or, you know, going into the toilet and just sitting down 5 minutes, or whatever it may be. There'll be habits that you've got. And a lot of conditioning. So it could have been, you know, a supervisor who had a go at you a year or two ago, and you've not allowed it to let go, and you've created habits now. You've not spoke up. You know, I mean, you create a habit where you become a little bit more silent, a bit more quiet. You may see something on site that isn't quite right, but because you fear that, you know, that talking to again, it's become a habit. So it sort of forces you to work out what habits are driving you. And then we got the identity, which to me is the deepest level. You know, who are you? You know, what conditioning has happened over the years? So you get people, for example, who go to networking or a new job, and they get the sweaty palms and the palpitations and the, you know, the nervousness and the anxiety. And they don't think anything about it. It's just that's the way they are. That's their identity. I'm just a roofer. I'm just. And you don't realize that many years ago, we had well-intentioned people like teachers, police officers, who may have said something like, you know, don't talk to strangers, stranger danger. You know, and what happens is when our emotions are heightened, something called a critical faculty opens, and any suggestion or experience at that moment goes deep and lays subconsciously. And so when the essence of what's happens, so they go into a new room with a load of strangers, all of a sudden this rises and raises the head, and you start getting the anxious feelings. You're thinking subconsciously, oh, stranger danger, there's a lot of strangers, I'm going to be killed here, I'm going to be dead. Whereas consciously, you're not thinking that, you're just getting the symptoms of anxiety. So once we understand who we are, where that's come from, we can then work on changing it.
And I think this is so important. This is why, Dave, I'll want to partner with you on this mission, right? Because something, and we spoke in the past as well, we're definitely aligned on you know, sort of the mindset and natural approach, people turning up for themselves, but it's helping people form those habits. It's helping people, you know, garnish that sense, that identity again. You know, like a lot of us have lost who we are, and we are a little bit out of touch with ourselves, and we don't turn up for ourselves and put the practice in and build these little positive habits that actually are going to drive you to a more positive life. We're almost out there providing for everybody else and making sure everybody else is okay, and is the missus making sure that she's got money on the table, and the kids have got food on the table, and like, all of a sudden you're doing everything outside of you. And what I think what you're trying to touch on there is, I think it's so important. In society right now, I feel like there's a real lack of connectivity. There's a lack of like you say, identity with ourselves, right? And so I think really important the work that you're doing. I've seen the app that you've created. It's amazing, and you know, I can only want to try and push that out and get people to see more of it, and hopefully get companies to start making it a bit more mandatory for people to do this, because everything's a practice, Dave, isn't it? Like you're not going to get this overnight. Like you said, like driving a car, how hard is it when you got to jump in there and you got to get your feet right, and you got to look in the mirror, and you got to do the gear stick, and you got to do indicators. Like, it's a lot. But all of a sudden, with the practice and the daily practice, all of a sudden you're having a cup of tea. God forbid no one does this, but they're on the phone. Like you're able to do these things. Yeah. But once it was, it was just all this stuff going on, and actually that goes for any sort of skill when you're learning it. And it is a skill to be mentally positive. It is a skill to be able to be compassionate and empathetic, and you ain't gonna build on that skill unless you practice it. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide the tools and trying to wake people up and educate people that no doctor's coming to pull the band-aid off. You know that, Dave, better than any man alive, right? That you can't trust, and you've got to trust in yourself. You've got to learn your own body. You've got to take that leap of faith. You'll educate yourself, and you're living proof of that. And I really do think it's really inspiring to hear your story. It really is.
Thank you. And I think it's important, especially with the app. It allows somebody that time on their own, be in that 5-minute bubble. And I think the important thing that needs to be stated is it is completely anonymous. Too many people don't want to do these initiatives because they feel it's going to leak down to HR or wherever it may be. This is completely anonymous. It stays on their phone. It doesn't get anywhere else. But the report every month goes to HR or goes to whoever signed up to the app, and it gives a breakdown, a real good breakdown of exactly where their workforce is at the moment. So it could be like, I don't know, the state part of it may be quite high, and the habits are quite high, so it gives them a tool to be able to really invest in the right areas to ensure the workforce are being supported in the best way possible. Because at the moment it's a scattergun approach with mental health and well-being. They just want, they say, we need resilience training. Do you really, when you're looking at the breakdown here, do you really need resilience training? No, we need to do more work on this. And that's where your money, you're not going to be wasting your money, because it is completely and utterly personalized to your workforce.
This is exactly what we're trying to achieve. So we definitely need to have another conversation after this off camera, just to talk about this, because our whole thing is data, and it's actually providing a heat map and showing where the areas of problems are on site, not giving them names, letting us have the names and let us do the background work. We help build company culture. We help drive the statistics down. We help, with the bottom line, because of, like you said, less absentees, more present, more loyal, more productive. Like, this is what makes up your business. And it's being overseen a little bit, because you can't really put your finger on it, but we're both singing off the same hymn sheet. It's data, and if we can get the companies to actually affect their bottom line, then actually they're going to chuck a load more money at helping their staff and some of the subcontractors too. So definitely really important work. So Dave, what are you up to now? You've just written a book. You've just made an app. You're busy. You've got your day job as well. Like, lots going on. What's in store for Dave for the next sort of 12 months?
Everest Base Camp. I'm putting the final touches to creating some sort of paraphernalia to try and get sponsorship in to help me.
How much you need to raise?
I think at most it'll be between 15 and 20,000. I think.
Really, yeah.
Because I'll probably need a little bit more support than most.
Yeah.
But also, especially with the physiotherapy side of things as well, you know, I probably need somebody on board for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be a big focus from external from work. That's my main goal. But for work, you know, I'm sick and tired of leaders getting bashed. You know, I look on LinkedIn and it's all leaders are doing this wrong, leaders are doing that wrong. You know, leaders are struggling as well. You know what I mean? Leaders are struggling as well. HR, you know, who supports HR? HR, you know, HR are doing firefights everywhere, trying to develop well-being strategies and various other things whilst they're losing the plot. You know what I mean? So I want to try and create a culture change within well-being professionals as well. You know, I can't do this on my own. You know what I mean? This is why I align with you so well as well, because you recognize this is not a one well-being organization approach. It needs to everybody come together and
it's exactly what
collaborate.
I'm beating my head against the wall at the minute with this, Dave. Literally beating my head against the wall. I've spoken to so many charities, so many different movements. They're all protecting their own position.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, well, because you're protecting your position, you're protecting your little bit of funding, it means that we can't collaborate, we can't signpost to one another. I ain't being funny, Dave, but someone who comes and joins our approach, it might not be for them. They might not be ready to pull their own socks up. They might actually just need an arm around them right now, and they need actually crisis support. Well, we need to signpost and work with a charity who works in that area, because we're all about the prevention side of things.
Yeah.
We need to come together. Like the suicide rates are going up. They're out of control. Like something needs to change. And so that's what we're trying to bring. And this is why me and you are having conversations, and we're having a conversation with Silent Voices right now. They're somebody, a charity that are forward thinking and want to collaborate. So
yeah,
there is people out there like us who are trying to bring us together and trying to, you know, beat off the same drum. But it's incredibly hard when you're up against some big charities who will not even open a conversation with you. They'll ignore every single LinkedIn message, email. It's just ridiculous. It's just like we're all going for the same desired outcome here. You know,
I think that's the question that needs to be asked into, you know, why did you set the charity up? Why did you set your business up? You know, what was the main goal at the time? Because unfortunately, we lose sight of the goal. The bigger we get, we start losing sight of why we actually started. And this is why it's important for me to carry on with the football and the rugby and whatever. You know, it all comes down to that, you know, getting on the floor playing with a child. You know what I mean? I want that balance where it's not about work, because I became quite obsessed at one point of pushing every single minute of the day, doing something. And, you know, forgetting the fact that, you know what, the whole point of this is to slow down and actually spend time with your family and do this. And that's the problem with a lot of charities and a lot of business at the moment, is they lose sight of why they got involved and why they started in the first place. And, you know, I want to stop people from ending their life through suicide. I want people to have clarity of thought before they go on site. I want people to be able to spend quality time with the family and not be thinking about debt and bills and, you know, potential HR issue or whatever. And so if that means me collaborating with you or somebody else to get that desired outcome, then so be it. You know what I mean?
This is it. Like they can like categorically, there is no space for ego for what we're trying to do.
And that's exactly what it is, ego.
It is. Unfortunately, it is. You know, we all have a bit of an ego. It's built inside of us, right? It's actually there to protect us back in the Stone Ages, but we ain't got those same threats nowadays. We just got the threats of opinions of others, which seem to scare us. Like you said, you know, it's the number one fear is public speaking.
Yeah,
you know, it's because of that ego.
One of the best bits of advice I can give around ego, because I talk about ego quite a lot, is, you know, somebody called it edging God out, which, you know, I like that. You know, it's edging God out, but there's a guy that I absolutely adore, an American comedian who went into the personal development space called Kyle Cease. Is incredible. I love him. And he goes on about ego. And he says, when you get that voice in the head, guaranteed, I'll walk past the mirror in the morning, and I'll hear the words "fat bastard." I'll hear it now because I've lost 6 stone in the last couple of years. Yeah. Because my old habits and my old identity was when I was homeless at 16 for 2 years. I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, and because I'd not dealt with that inner work, it lay subconsciously. When I was getting my big shop, I was still driving on the old behaviors.
Yeah.
And so therefore I was binge eating. I was getting 5 sandwiches instead of 2 sandwiches. I was getting chocolate. I was getting it. And so I put on 6 stone. And so I was heavily overweight. Once I dealt with that, I started losing the weight, started eating healthy, etc., etc. But my old sort of programming is still fat bastard. So I'll hear it. And RC said, give it a name, give the voice a name, because our thoughts aren't real. We know our thoughts aren't real. We're the observer of our thoughts. It's based on all conditioning, all thoughts. And so I give my name, my voice, a name called Gary, which is that awful snail from SpongeBob. He's so annoying. And so I'll call it Gary. And I'll hear it, and I'll hear fat bastard. I say, oh, morning, Gary. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being fat. I should have had those donuts. And by acknowledging it, you're disassociating the thought from you, which is a major part of it, because people are still believing nobody's ended their life through suicide unless they've been in a complete psychotic episode. But 99.9% of people who've ended their life through suicide have not ended their life through suicide because of the thoughts. It's because they took action on the thoughts. It's because they believe the thoughts are real. Okay. And so by giving it a name, by being self-aware of this little voice coming in, it disassociates that thought. So then all of a sudden you become that observer. And
you can laugh at the thought.
Exactly. It's not real. It's just his opinion. It's just opinion, because factually I'm not fat. I'm quite slim. I blame the healthy living and the exercise. My wife blames the fact that I'm very ill. He said, oh, you're losing weight. He said, yeah, but I'm an athlete. But the good thing is by giving a name, you disassociate from thoughts. And so it's acknowledge, accept, and thank. So it's like if you're a landlord and you've got the worst tenant in the world, look at it like a tenant, and it's in the middle of summer, and he'll come out and he'll say, you're the worst landlord in the world. My fireplace isn't working. The bar's broken the fireplace. And you're thinking it's 35 degrees. What the hell have you got a fireplace on for anyway? But if you was to attack back at the tenant and say, oh, will you stop being stupid now? Come on, it's summer, we don't need a fireplace, just get out of my way, you're doing me head in now. That tenant's going to get louder and louder. I'm going to go to the council, I'm going to go to the police, I'm going to do this. But if you acknowledge him and said, you know what, you pay rent, I accept, you're here, we'll sort it, don't worry about it, and just acknowledge, accept, and thank, the tenant then goes back into his little hovel and leaves you alone. Exactly the same as the thought. If you acknowledge, accept, and thank, the thought disappears. And then you can just get on with your day. It's normal. It's just being self-aware. And this is where this shift code in the app come in. It's stopping you from all that external noise and just allowing you to listen and say, right, okay. Because most people are scared. I love meditation. The most I've done meditation is, I think, 5 hours. I want to get to 8 hours. I want to get to 8 hours. Yeah, I want to get to 8 hours, but I've got kids and a dog and a cat and a wife. So unless I escape, it's not happening. But most people, if I was to say to 1,000 people, do you believe and accept that meditation can genuinely help with your mental health? 1,000 people say yeah. If you say to the same 1,000 people, have you tried meditation? About 950 will say, yeah, but I didn't get along with it. As soon as I was quieting down, it's like a portal. Everything came in. I don't like it. And so they quit. Yeah. So it's about, and I'd love schools to do this, primary schools in assemblies, just to sit for 10 minutes in silence. And then the first half hour of the day, get the kids to write down what they were thinking. If you want to share it, great. If not, but just getting them used to the fact that the thoughts aren't real. It's based on all conditioning, all the ego. And And so, yeah, by acknowledging, accepting, and thanking, it allows, these thoughts just to disappear.
Just to go on to touch on what you just said there, in terms of like maybe going to, like, you'd love for kids to do this, just 10 minutes, because it's that habit form, what you're talking about. It's that education, it's getting them to do it, and then hopefully they will take that onto as they grow up, they take that into their life. Most people go on to do meditation, and like you said, they're put off by the fact that all these noises start coming in. They can't sit with their breath. Actually, meditation, all the meditative part is the being conscious and understanding that thought is coming in, and it's catching that thought, and it's quieting that thought with breath, or just being present. That part is the meditation. It's not the whole part. So everybody can meditate, everybody. And we do Zoom sessions on our online school platform. We do meditation, breath work, and we do other stuff as well. But I feel like these two, meditation and breath work, are the most important right now. There's I know this might sound a little bit like tin hat, but there is an attack on our nervous systems right now. We can't open our phones up without going on to doom scroll. And unfortunately, what we're doom scrolling on, for example, my girlfriend's Persian, she's opening up her app every day and seeing awe, and seeing, the fear of dad might have to, be blown up. Like, that is the reality that she's living in. What does that do to her nervous system? It heightens it. And if you're on a heightened nervous system, you're in that fight or flight all the time. And actually, majority of society are living in that frequency. And if we're living in that frequency, what else is that going to attract? What sort of mindset, what sort of thoughts are going to be creeping in? Of course, we're all fucking depressed right now. It's our nervous systems are on fire. And how do you quieten it? It's doing what you said, Dave. It's meditate. It's becoming self-aware. It's checking your thoughts. Detaching those thoughts. But there's not real education out there on that. And if you ain't got anyone beating the drum, who out there, Dave, is really marketing meditation? Well, you're not making no money from it. Unless it's an app, there's no money to be made out of meditation. So the doctors don't tell you. And it's not because the doctors, we're making loads of money. No, but it's just not in their makeup of how they do things. It's got to be driven by, there's got to be money at the end of each conversation they have.
We need to market it differently as well, because when you talk about meditation, or when people talk about meditation, you almost get in, the woo-woo and Zen, Buddha and all this. Because, when you're washing the pots, you're meditating. If you're looking out the window and that's meditation, you know what I mean? It's but one analogy that I'd give to your wife, because I don't really truly understand what's going on at the moment, because I don't watch the news, I don't read the news. Because if you lived in a penthouse, say on Blackpool Pier, okay, and you had no social media, you had no TV, you had no media whatsoever, and there was a tsunami due to come in and wipe out your whole penthouse apartment, I always ask people, I said, would you know about it? And they no, because there's no social media. I said, if it affects you, don't you think that one of your neighbours or your family member or friend will start knocking on and say, oh, Pete, John, whoever, there's a tsunami coming, you need to get the hell out? So why go looking for trouble? Why go looking for stuff that is not going to affect you? Okay. If it's important to you, you'll find a way. You know what I mean? For example, if you're going on holiday and you're at the airport and all of a sudden you hear gate number 12's open, get your ass in gear, going. All of a sudden you're like, come on, wife, kids, get going, gate 12's open. You're not sat in the airport for those 2 hours beforehand thinking, right, listen out for the gate. But because it's important to you, you've got that emotional thought and the emotional attachment, it's going to deliver the results and you're going to hear about it. Okay. So I don't need to know what's going on in the Middle East, because unless I'm going to go out there and start fighting for the Rebel Alliance or whatever it is, I can't do anything about it.
That's the thing.
I can't do anything about it. So I'm not going to push my emotions into a heightened state for something that I can't control. Yeah, no. I can empathize. You know, we've supported many people in Knutsford who are Ukrainian and what have you. I can empathize.
But even just that empathizing, it's like, of course we empathize. I think we both are empathetic people. But when you can't do nothing about it, that's damaging to you, because it's like, like we're set up as a society to be able to feel empathy within 150 people, because you can feel empathy, but you can actually do something about it.
Yeah,
you can lean on each other, you can go and support that person. Anything over 150, like for example, my girlfriend, again, bring it back to that, she's got the whole of our country, a whole nation right now who are living in fear. She can't do nothing about it. And all you want to do as a human is go and help your tribe. Is go and do something. What can we do? How can we help them? Can't even ring them because internet's cut off, right? So it's like, but as the human brain will always go, let's check the news. Let's check it this morning. She's done a really great job this last week just to go, do you know what? Stepping away from the news. Like, it is just, it's becoming too consuming, too damaging for our own mind, right? But society, 10 o'clock, you wake up in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, you got news. 10 o'clock in the morning, you got more news. 6 p.m, more news. 10 o'clock at night, more news. Like, it's coming in, different alerts coming through, notification on your phone, breaking news. Social media, more news. You can't get away from it. You have to consciously set up your day to not turn on the media.
Yeah.
And again, it's other things. Consciously not put that in your diet. Consciously don't just sit on your ass all day. You need to stand, you need to get up, you need to move. Like, we have to do this, right? Otherwise it's not going to happen. And so you've consciously made a decision, I'm not chucking on the news because I can't help it.
No,
you're a person who wants to help situations. You're a problem solver. You come with solutions. When you turn the news on, you're helpless, you're powerless. So it is damaging, and it's damaging.
It's just mass hypnosis. So that's the thing, is when you turn the news on, you know, I talked about the critical faculty before. It's heightening our emotions, so it's opening the critical faculty, and then they put in. It's like, do you remember the Twin Towers attack? That really affected me because I love New York. I'm obsessed with New York. But then you started having the traffic light system for the terror threat: amber, green, red. It was messing with our emotions, and so all of a sudden it was a mass hypnosis event where everybody was fearful, and there was all emotions was completely dysregulated.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So if you look, I remember when I was 22, I lived for a year in the lakes, in the Lake District, living off the land in a tent. And the farmer taught me what to catch and what I could eat, what berries, what leaves, etc., etc. And I loved it. It was the most spiritual awakening ever. At 22 years old, it was fantastic. But when I came back to civilization, nothing had changed. And it dawned on me very quickly, you know what? We live in cycles. Pretty much every 4 to 6 years, there's either a war, there's a pandemic or an endemic, there's a crisis, there's a plane crash. It's just in cycles.
Yeah.
And you think, you know, again, I don't want to go down the tin hat route, but we've seen this every single 4 to 6 years, the same thing, same shit, different day. You know what I mean? And the year that I spent in the Lake District taught me quite a few things, but one main thing was all I can impact is those on around us. So, for example, if I'm in the car and I get to a junction, I'll let a car go through. And if I follow that car, guaranteed at the next junction, that car will let somebody else through.
Yeah.
Now, by the end of the day, I know probably about 100 people will have been positively impacted by my one decision to let that car through. I don't care about the 98 that I don't know about, because I know it's happening. I care the fact that I did the first action. Or if I'm walking down the road and a lady's in front of me, I'll purposely run across the road and get in front. Because that then makes her feel safe and know that she's, you know, in control.
Yeah.
And you don't know what that lady's thinking. She may have had a bad experience with a man or whatever, but I don't care about that, because I just know that I've done the right thing.
Yeah.
And if more people just do these little micro decisions, it'll have a ripple effect.
100%.
You know what I mean?
The energy of the world will just rise. I've been saying this about the tube stations. Like, I live in London now. Millions of people jump on that tube every single day. If they had people working on the tubes with some high energy, people giving out smiles, people holding doors for people, a reminder to, remember, be vigilant, look out for your older people, look out for the women and the children, like, get up, give you a seat. Like, if we had people on them tubes and maybe a little bit of music, a little bit of atmosphere, actually every day there would be an uplift. And then millions of people in London smiling and communicating, connecting with each other. Like, that for me would move mountains for society again. Like, it's just these little things.
You just triggered me there with the tube, though, because I lived in Essex for 3 years. I lived in Chelmsford, and I was regional manager for a news agency, McCall's. So they had a head office in Brentwood, and I was regional manager. So I had a shop in Peckham, and I had a shop in Stoke Newington, because I love danger and stress. And my first experience really of the tube, when I lived down there, I was letting people through. After you. I missed 3 tubes because I was too polite, and people were just pushing right past me, not even saying thank you. After you. After the third tube that I missed, I became one of them, and I just pushed in. And I thought, after about a few months, I thought, I hate where I'm becoming, because you almost felt like you had to be part of that pride of people just pushing. And the very first day I can't remember what station I was in, but I was slumped when I moved down there. I was slumped with my cases in the middle of a escalator. Big mistake. And I die because obviously people like running up to the left or the right, whatever. And I was slumped in the middle like that, absolutely knackered. And somebody actually pulled me down the escalator, and I fell right down the escalator. So I went flying up, and I got this guy up against the wall. I was like, what the? And he seemed genuinely surprised that I was upset. I said, and his response was, but he was in the middle. I thought, well, that gives you the right to pull me right down and nearly break my neck. They just didn't get it. And I was like, oh, yeah. It's amazing how very quickly you become part of the problem.
Yeah. But
to fit in, to just get on with your life. And it's like, you have to be, as you say, real conscious of every decision you make. It's tiring. It can be really stressful. Because when you're fighting against the tide, because most people, read the news and watch the news, and they're already in that fearing state. When you've got the sort of the minimum people trying to push against the tide, it takes a strong person to keep pushing and not fall to become part of that tsunami.
No, it does.
Just keep doing what you're doing, because it's working.
I appreciate that. And likewise, Dave, and we need to have a follow-up conversation, mate, because we're very much aligned on how we do things. And listen, the problem, the crisis is so bad now that we've talked about, togetherness. We need more people. So I'm excited where our conversation to go. I'm excited to read your book, and I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Just for a second. There we go. I got it with it.
Oh, right there, bring him down. So
there we go.
From morphine to match fit. There we go. Love that. What a great title.
You know what? When you talk about match fit, people think, it's a perfect state, and it's not. It's just you're ready to get going.
Ready to go.
When you're on the side of the pitch, you've got your boots on, you've got your shin pads, you've got everything that you need to protect you on that pitch, and you're ready. It doesn't mean you're in a perfect state. You're just in a ready state.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Dave, you've got some unbelievable stories and great wisdom and experience, and we've been very thankful, very lucky to have you join us today. But I'm looking forward to carrying the conversation. We'll go from there.
Lovely. Look forward to it.
All the best. Cheers, Dave. Take care.
Cheers, mate.